and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I find out who I really am by asking myself, who am I? And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Thursday. Terrific Thursday. I hope. I guess we'll see. Hope you've all had a good week so far. For those of you in the wonderful world of the United States, it's starting to get warm in many places. Boy, oh boy. And I hate it. I am not built for this. So I will try to distract myself today with the pure intelligence that is TEDx. I'm sure that's what this will be today. I'm sure. My fingers are crossed. My toes are crossed. My eyes are crossed? Not really. Anyway, who is joining me for this adventure to access identity? Jaeger Pony, hello. Nathaniel Taylor, hello. Jimmy Melquist, hello. Sean Uli, hello. Zalbla, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Funtime Bats, hello. Some Num Nation, hello. Debate Fly, hello. Scanner Daftly, hello. Lexi Mads, well, I guess we can start now. Birgid, Brigid, Burgiger, hello. Your boy Pat, hello. Check Your Logic, hello. Dr. Keeve, hello. Big Dave, hello. Well, it's jumping all over the place now. Matt Barnes, hello. Faith Alexandria, Oglesby, hello. Colleen Byrne, yay, hello. Robert Pincus, hello. Mike R, hello. Twisted Skipster, hello. Atheist Icon, hello. Corey Suzuki, hello. Did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. All right. Well, if I didn't, I apologize. But we're going to move on into the wonderful world of accessing identity. What does that mean? I don't know, because these days identity can be any element of your physical makeup and or heretical background that you decide qualifies as an identity. So I guess we'll find out. From Beaver County Day School. Nothing says high-minded education like Beaver County. Anyway, today's bingo card, for those of you that don't know, is bingo card C. C as in Clint Barton, because I decided to go with secret identities as the bingo card polling mechanism today. So get out your bingo cards. Links are in the description if you don't already have yours ready. And I'll give you a second to get that ready with, thank you, this is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. Whoops. And I accidentally clicked, but all the same. Dr. Keeve says hi to Robert Pincus, Mr. E, and Twisted Skipster. Mr. E, hello. Yeah, just as an aside, the idea of the secret identity in superheroes has kind of gone by the wayside at this point, hasn't it? I mean, in most of the superhero movies, at least the Marvel movies, is there anyone whose secret identity is actually secret anymore, except for maybe... No, not even Peter Parker, because at the end of the last movie. Yeah, so do secret identities matter in this day and age? I don't know. Maybe our speaker will tell us. Maybe he'll use an illusion or an allegory or a metaphor or a simile using superheroes when talking about identity. Either way, let's begin. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will proceed.
At some point,
we've all questioned our identity, or we've questioned who we are, or we've sought to figure out what kind of person am I? Something like that. That sound all right? Let's see. I can't hear it, says Lexi Mads. Loud and clear, says Megan Ring. Clear, says Jamie Milquist. Well, Lexi, I guess you've just got a personal problem. So that's on you. Anyway, at some point
in our lives, each of us has had to fill out either an application or a registration form.
Oh, please don't tell me it's going to be select your ethnicity or your gender or something. Thank you, lamented guide. Hello, scribe. Long time no see. Hello, guide. How's it going? You must have been busy, or just, the timing of these broadcasts just doesn't work with most people. I understand that. It's just one of those things, kind of real life, kind of slots me into a particular time frame. And I wanted to start doing a regular day because during the bulk of the pandemic, I was doing them practically every day or every other day or something like that. I just needed to regiment myself for a New Year's resolution. But either way, glad to see you. Okay, filled out a registration form and had to select your ethnicity or your gender or whatever. And of course, these things qualify as identities, correct?
For most people, the information's pretty standard. You have to fill out your name, your age, maybe your date of birth, your address.
Uh-huh.
For me, filling out my college applications brought me to a crossroads.
Let's see. I'm just guessing here. You come from a mixed household of some fashion. I don't know what, either ethnicity or racial or religious or something. And you had to check a box. You only got to check one box, right?
As I said, most of the information was pretty normal. But then I got to those little check boxes where you needed to indicate your race.
I knew it. But yes, Dr. Keeve makes a good point. On to the bingo card, circling free space and a list. We already have a list right in front of us, if not otherwise. I will hold off over reviewing the card until he said a couple more things here, because I have a feeling we might just get at least a bingo out of this. Let's see. So what did you struggle? What did you struggle over having to answer?
Now, I paused here because I wasn't quite sure what that meant for me.
By your college admissions forms, you weren't sure what that meant for you. So at no other point prior to your college admissions had you ever had to fill out an application or a registration that asked these questions. I'm half inclined to circle anecdote that never happened, but
I say this because I am adopted.
Oh, okay. Well, now, okay, I'll step back. That may be a more relevant argument than just sort of like dithering over your parental background. But all the same, again, you never had to face this question at any point prior to college.
And as a junior in high school, I had so many questions.
Wait. I thought we were talking about college. Wait, did I mishear that? I'm sorry. Did I mishear him? Did he say college application or high school? What? I'm going to back up because I want to get this right. I don't want to get this wrong.
The information was pretty normal.
Hold on.
College application.
All right.
Filling out my college applications.
Okay, your college did you fill out your college applications when you were a junior in high school? What? I am suddenly very confused.
One, that I was born Latinx by birth.
No, you were not born Latinx by birth. Oh boy.
More specifically, that I was Mexican American.
So wait, were you born in the United States? Or were you, because if you were born in the United States, you were never a Mexican? Or were you born in Mexico and adopted from there to the United States? Because, okay, I'm just confused. And besides which, I didn't see Latinx as an option on that form.
And two,
yeah,
that I was raised by a white family.
What does that have to do with anything? It's asking about you. It's not asking about your parents. If you are adopted, you certainly could possess different aspects than your adopted parents. What does that have to do with anything? Please tell me.
So both my parents were white.
Yeah.
My brothers were white.
Uh-huh.
Did that make me white?
Sure, why not?
Was I one more than the other?
I don't know. How do you value race as an identifier? You tell me. I have a feeling you value it quite heavily if you're dithering over this much.
How should I choose? So this made me think, what is my identity and where do I belong?
Oh, okay. I'm going to go to the bingo card. Marginalized marginalization. Not yet. Collectivize his own demographic. Kind of. I don't know. It's, oh, wait. Leaves out vital context. I mean, he's explained himself a little bit now. Feminism, no. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, no. Anecdote that probably never happened. Yeah, I don't believe that at no point prior to filling out his college application, he ever had to confront the question of his ethnicity, which is really all this is asking. It's not asking about identity, it's asking about ethnicity. And he knows the answer to that question. And the answer to that question, I hate to tell him this, says nothing about who he is. Thank you again, Lamented Guide. Oh boy, a Latinx mixin. We're in for a ride, I think. Every time I try to say Latinx or Wamixin or Mixin or whatever, I think of that Superman enemy, Mr. Now, of course, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but this is how I learned it on the cartoon show, Mr. Mixelplick, even though it's like Mixielkaplick or something. Either way, that's what I think of when I see terms like that. Thank you, Lamented Guide. Let's see, back to the bingo card real quick. What do we got? Let's see, yeah. Anecdote that probably never happened. Contradicts own point or argument. Well, I haven't heard it yet. Diversity and inclusion, not yet. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, not yet. Plays victim. I'm getting that distinct sensation, if not already, but I'm going to let it sit for a bit. Word salad, not yet. Mind reading assumes motives. I guess you'll have to start talking about other people. Benevolent condescension. We'll probably get there. Patriarchy, no. Wage gap, no. Systemic institutional. Possibly. That's like a probably, possibly, yeah. Privilege, not yet. Childhood or family anecdote, yes, he's talked about his family, being white, etc. Self-vilification or wretchedness, maybe, we'll see. Equity, not yet. Weightless example, not yet. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I mean, in terms of saying that it defines identity, I certainly am willing to circle that by the end of this. And white supremacy, not yet. So far we have circled anecdote that probably never happened, free space, a list, and childhood or family anecdote with several likely pending. But
so I talked to my parents about it to see which one I should choose.
Really? You had to go have a family conference over which ethnicity to checkbox or indicate, even though you knew your origins? Okay.
And they told me that I should choose the one that marks Latinx since that was my race.
Latinx? Wait, was Latinx an option on that thing, or at a minute 35? I was going to take a second to let this sit for a second. Show me on this form Latinx. Oh, that's right. It's not there because it's not a real term. It doesn't actually reflect anyone who actually falls into that category or would be considered to fall into that category, because if you ask anybody who falls into that demographic, they'll look at you like, what the hell are you talking about?
That was my race. I wasn't sure if I agreed with them or not, but I decided I wasn't going to argue it, so I did it.
And suddenly the sky fell, the moon turned as black as sackcloth, the seas boiled, the skies fell, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Is that what resulted from you marking Latino?
College admissions started coming back, and I was elated to find out that I was admitted to the University of Michigan.
Good for you.
It was my dream come true.
Really?
Naturally, being a high school student, I went back. I shared this with my friends and my other classmates.
Wait, you applied for college in your junior year? Because he was talking about being a junior in college. So I'm trying to remember when I started applying. I didn't. Can you apply for colleges earlier than your senior year? I guess I don't know. I'll take his word for it.
We love to interchange stories of joy, stories of struggle.
Uh-huh.
But there was one conversation I remember having with one of my classmates.
Okay.
And he was experiencing his own frustration with his admission status to the University of Michigan.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he said, "You only got in because you're Mexican."
Dun, dun, dun! Wow. Okay, first and foremost, that's kind of presumptuous. Secondly, I don't know. What kind of affirmative action policy does the University of Michigan have? Did you actually benefit from affirmative action? Affirmative action. I don't know.
And that's not fair because you're not even Mexican.
Well, yeah, that's a bad way to frame the argument, obviously. I wonder if we'll have an answer to the question, however.
Did that hurt?
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it hurt most because I thought to myself, who are you to decide what I am and what I am not?
You checked the box on the admission form. If the University of Michigan has an affirmative action policy, and if you happen to benefit from it, I don't know if you did or not, then your classmate, while not putting it in the most friendly of terms, obviously, and starts getting into territory that's pretty lousy, may have had a point, but I don't know. But you decided, you said you were Mexican American as this talk began. So, thank you, Mr. Tiggletrunk, for the happy, smiling, dancing Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox. Wowie, wow, wow. Dogcat Fox is happy today. Thank you, Mr. Tiggletrunk. Who are you to decide what I am? Well, you decided what you were, right? You struggled over that. And it's not really a matter of decision because you told us where your origins are from. So I'm confused.
Why are other people defining my identity for me?
They're not. Okay, first and foremost, your classmate made an assumption, as far as I can tell, without evidence, okay, that you got into the university on the basis of your ethnicity through, I'm assuming, an affirmative action program. Now, whether he knew that to be the case or not, I can't say. I will lean on the benefit of the doubt and say that he was just being a sourpuss and a sore loser because it sounds like he didn't get into the university, okay? As far as defining your identity, you just spent the first minute or so of this talk telling us what your identity was, and it effectively matches with what your classmate, quote unquote, accused you of. But even if your classmate had said, you're Swiss, it still would not have defined an identity. Ethnicity is not an identity. Race is not an identity. Gender is not an identity. None of these things say anything about who you are. I can't count how many times I've said that exact same statement over the last 4 years, but it seems to bear repeating.
And here I have someone, a classmate, making these generalizations for me.
Oh.
What was I supposed to do?
I don't know. Make the generalizations for yourself since you've decided to completely abdicate notions of actual identity for surface level aesthetics.
How do I interact in that? How do I really define my identity?
I don't know.
It really kickstarted this journey.
Oh.
And so I take these little checkboxes and I reflected on it and I thought, how do people actually define their identity?
Not through their skin color unless they are a racial identitarian, which is kind of a dumb way to live your life. I'll just say it. It is a stupid way to look at your life or the lives of others. But here you are.
Through my discoveries, I found that most people are able to link their identity and their cultural heritage directly to their parents. Now, let me be clear. My parents were wonderful.
Well, let me be clear. My parents were wonderful. Why do I sense a but coming?
Gave me so many great traditions and cultural things that I can exhibit and love and earn.
Uh-huh.
But how will I ever access and understand the Mexican part of my identity?
The Mexican part of your identity. The nationalistic part of your identity. An identity that you never knew growing up. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if you want to find your familial roots, I mean, that's certainly a thing. Sure. But okay, tell me about the Mexican part of your identity.
How will I share that with my own children?
How? I don't know. How does anyone share aspects of their culture or their heritage or whatever else with anybody? You talk about it, or you make the related foods, or you do the things. Is this something that you were really struggling with? How to do? Okay.
This thought brought me to the cornerstone of an idea. How does someone access their identity? There are so many people out there who are struggling and are in need of someone to provide the guidance. They need someone that they can talk to so they can understand all the different traditions, recipes, and all the other celebrations that come with their cultural heritage.
Okay, cultural heritage and identity are not the same thing. Okay? Just like with race, skin color, ethnicity, so on and so on. Your cultural identity. Cultural identity. Okay. I feel like I'm just going to be repeating myself, which I have a million times now, but let's just let our speaker dig the hole.
But what do these people do if that lifeline is not available?
They call your consulting firm, your life coaching business, your hotline, the website, or the app that you've created.
What if that person is not there so that they can talk to and understand more?
I don't know.
So this set me off to go and find some answers.
Uh-huh.
About 11 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to the People of Color conference from my school.
The People of Color conference for your school. 11 years ago, and this was filmed in 2019. So in 2008, boy, oh boy.
The People of Color Conference is a conference primarily for individuals who identify as a person of color.
You don't say.
They can go, they can hear keynote speakers, they can attend workshops. They can also participate in affinity groups.
Affinity groups? Oh boy! Man, affinity groups. We love affinity groups around here, don't we, chat? Oh yeah, affinity groups are our favorite thing. Okay, going over to the bingo card again, I'm going to circle collectivize his own demographic. You know, where do Mexicans go? Where do Latinos go, etc. Let's see. Feminism, microaggression, consciousness, diversity. It hasn't said diversity inclusion yet. Plays victim. I'm circling plays victim because, oh, woe is me. Where will I ever find the ability to research my cultural heritage? Who will help me? I am completely lost in the wilderness to find, etc., etc. Okay, so I've got collectivized zone demographic, anecdote that probably never happened, plays victim, free space, a list, and childhood or family anecdotes. So that's where we're at.
Now, the affinity groups are meetings for people who identify with a specific race or ethnicity.
Yes, and this was something sponsored by your school, you say. So a school event portioned people off on the basis of race and or ethnicity. Shall I read you the Education Amendments, or at least Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1960? Shall I?
When I got to the conference, I wasn't quite sure where I should go.
Oh,
Should I go to the white European affinity group?
yeah.
Should I go to the Latinx affinity group? I wasn't sure.
I have a feeling, and I could be mistaken, I don't know how long the term goes back. I have a feeling that in 2008, Latinx wasn't a term people used. I mean, personally, I did not hear of its existence until around 2016. So, I mean, maybe it was out there in 2008, but you go with you. Okay, well, where do I go? I don't know what to do. I mean, I wasn't born white, but my parents were white, so does that make me white? Affinity groups don't care about your parentage. They care about your aesthetic. Anyway, thank you, John Miller. Universities are great places to foster racisms. Yeah, it's amazing to me. Tell me more about splitting yourselves off on the basis of skin color.
I was confused.
Yes, obviously.
But luckily, I had some colleagues who were incredibly supportive of me.
Oh, okay.
And they encouraged me to go to the Latinx affinity group because they said, go and learn more about who you are.
So your colleagues were encouraging racial segregation because birds of a feather flock together. Like should only meet with like. A culture that you never knew. We're going to put you with a whole bunch of people who obviously also know exactly what that culture is because you all share the same skin tone. And consequently, you all have the same culture, you all have the same thought process, you all value the same things, obviously. Got it.
And so I went.
Mm-hmm.
When I arrived, though,
Mm-hmm.
I immediately felt out of place.
Really?
I sat down and I heard stories from individuals, and they shared how their culture was so important to their identity.
Well, that's good for them. Okay, that's good for them. And I just want to make a clarification. If you value your heritage and your culture and you see that as part of who you are, that's fine. However, take away all of those things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are then a completely different person. None of those things define who you are. Right? A white male, long hair, beard, carpenter, heterosexual. Am I talking about Jesus Christ, or am I talking about serial killer Israel Keys? Doesn't say anything about what kind of person you are. Your culture is not your name. The kind of food you eat is not your identification. If it's important to you, great. I'm not going to argue with you on that one. If you value it in your life, if it enriches your life, great. But none of it is an identity.
I offered up my own stories, and I tried to describe what it meant for me to have a Latin identity.
A Latin identity. Okay, you're going to have to define for me what a Latin identity is, as though it's a singular thing.
But as I spoke, I realized that I didn't share the same involvement with the culture and the traditions. I realized that I didn't have that same commonality and that common point.
And everybody in that group all shared the exact same level of cultural interest and involvement. Because obviously they did, because they all had the right skin color. You know, I'd like to put you in a room with a white Texan and a white German and a white Slovakian. and not tell you which is which. And then you tell me what their culture is by looking at them. Also, Latin as a category covers a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures. I'm not sure you know this, being a raised, not sure Latinx person. But when you're talking about someone who comes from quote unquote Latin America or is Latin, it is a wide range of different things. I don't know if you know that.
I honestly just felt lost.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself,
Yes.
how am I ever going to start this conversation about learning more of my identity if I can't even have that space here?
Here, I got to ask a question for you. All right. The way you grew up, the experiences you had, the culture that existed within your family, your neighborhood, your peers, everything that you experienced up to the point of walking into that affinity group, what if, and I know this is crazy, what if all of that constituted your identity, your culture, your specific, unique culture? If you have to put a label on it, what if everything that led up to you being you at the moment you went to that affinity group is your culture? What if? What if you can claim that as your own, your specific own? What if that is what makes up your identity? Why do you need to go to somewhere and to something that was never a part of your life to define your identity? Why are you disparaging everything that your parents did and every experience you had up to that point as somehow invalid or not? I don't know. It has nothing to do with you. You have to go off to some place and some thoughts and some culture you have no connection with other than skin color. Everything else is meaningless. That's kind of sad.
How will I learn more and discover more about myself if even in this space, I wouldn't be able to find it?
I don't know.
So reflecting on this, it made me think about how difficult it really is to talk about and start the conversation of identity.
Says you. You had this problem. You had this problem, this self-made, self-generated problem. Also, is it just me or does he look like he works at Target?
Even now,
I'm talking about the outfit, by the way.
when I have these conversations and I talk to people and I inform them that I'm adopted, I tend to get sympathetic responses. I tend to get the, oh, I didn't know, or I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, because usually if someone's been adopted, if some kid has been adopted, there's likely some not so fun backstory to that situation, wherein your birth parents were unable to take care of you or chose not to, or who knows what. A child who is adopted, more likely than not, has some origin of discomfort in that regard. That might be what they're sympathizing against.
And that always left me so confused because
Why?
Are you agreeing in some way that there's a part of my identity I'll never understand?
No, it means that something happened to where you did not have your parents with you. What? Okay, mind reading assumes motives. Circling that one. What kind of jerk are you? What's all this accusatory stuff? Like they're being bad guys because they're sympathizing with what must have been at some point in your origins a not so fun event that led to that. Gosh, expressing sympathy for your disconnection from your birth parents or whatever might have happened to put you in that position as a child. Oh no, What is that saying? What are they saying about my identity? Like, good Lord.
Or are you implying that somehow my life has been less fortunate because I'm adopted?
Come on. Seriously?
But the truth is,
Uh-huh.
my parents,
Yeah.
they're my parents.
Are they, though? Because you seem to be rejecting everything they did for you growing up as somehow inconsequential to identifying yourself.
My brothers, they are my brothers. They are my family.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no other way for me to think about that.
Except you just spent the last 7 minutes telling us that there is another way to think about that, as in you're not actually part of that family. You're not actually connected to them. You're actually something completely different, and you need to find that truth that has been denied you your entire life because of the burden of being adopted into the wrong color family. That's what I'm getting from your talk. Maybe you don't mean it that way, but it sure sounds like it.
When I hear these conversations, I often love to relive them in my mind. I love to think about how I wish people would have handled that conversation a little differently.
So you indulge in conflict fantasy quite a bit. You like to imagine scenarios of verbal conflict. Conversations. It's interesting pastime.
And when it comes down to it, I really wish people would just ask questions and listen.
Okay.
I wish that they would engage and learn more about what it is for my identity.
I don't care about your identity. I don't care. You are not the center of my universe. You will not become the center of my universe. When I meet a person, you know how I define their identity? By their name. Outside of that, I don't know. And unless or until they decide to share with me something that is important to them, all I know is who they are by their name and by their deeds. What they do, how they treat other people, how they treat themselves. That, in my mind, is identity. What you're talking about is effectively adjectives. Personal adjectives. I am Latinx. I am whatever. I am this. I am that. You're not those things, though. You are not those things. You are you. And your identity doesn't mean anything to me unless I care to know it.
Because when they engage and become a little bit more vulnerable with themselves, I feel like they will learn more about me and learn more about themselves.
Through you, I shall know myself. Well, thank you so much. If only I could be more vulnerable to allow your wisdom to flow through me, that I might better understand who I am by understanding who you are because of your skin color and your ethnicity. Not your name, which you haven't even given us yet. That's interesting, isn't it? I'm going to talk about identity. He hasn't even said his own name.
So even a simple question of saying, hey, I didn't know you were adopted. Tell me more about what that means for you.
I guess, if I cared, but sure, I could ask that question if I didn't feel like I was prying. But most people would probably, think it might be a sensitive topic for you and wait for you to offer up that information than to interrogate you about it. Besides which, why do you need me to be curious about you?
So how does this translate to others? How does this apply to the bigger picture?
I have no idea.
I believe I'm not alone.
You are not alone.
I believe that there are people out there who are struggling to understand who they are, what their identity is, and how to know more about it. But they simply just do not know how to begin the conversation.
You're right. There's so many idiots out there that just have absolutely no idea how to define themselves in their own way. So, do you have a method for us? Do you have a pathway? Do you have a guidebook, an app, a website, an organization, anything that might help us define ourselves when we just have no idea how to do it?
We, as a community, need to be willing to take that first step and to reach out and ask questions and engage others to bring them in and to be comfortable with who we are, so that way they know that it's safe to ask those questions.
But how can I be comfortable with who I am when I have no idea who I am, because I don't know how to ask the questions about who I am, because who I am is completely separate from how I live, apparently, or what's happened to me, or how I was raised, or I'm very confused. You know what? And speaking of which, I'm going to circle benevolent condescension. Nobody knows how to figure things out. Only I have this wisdom. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Marginalization. Not yet. Leaves out vital context. Yeah, I'm going to wait on that one. Feminism, no. Microaggressions, unconscious bias. I mean, he's given examples of what could be considered microaggressions. The whole, you only got into that college because you're Mexican or whatever. But I already used that for anecdotes. So no, I didn't use that for anecdotes. I used the never had to check a box until college. Hey, you know what? I'm going to circle that one. Microaggressions, unconscious bias. Contradicts own point or argument. I mean, his entire talk so far is a contradiction, because he's defining identity as things that have nothing to do with identity. Diversity and inclusion, not yet. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. I keep waiting for him to give us something, but he hasn't. Word salad, probably by the end of this, if not earlier. Patriarchy, no. Wage gap, no. Systemic institutional, I could stretch if I was going for the whole implications about affirmative action, but I'm going to set that aside. Privilege, he hasn't said it. I mean, self-vilification or wretchedness, kind of. I'm going to wait on that one. Equity, no. Weightless example. My brain's melting. There might be one in there somewhere. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. This entire thing might get that one. And white supremacy, not yet. Not even implicitly. So
here's why I feel this is true.
Okay.
Last year, I had the opportunity to go back to the People of Color Conference.
Oh, the People of Color Conference. Yes. And did you suddenly have a new insight into how to split yourself off along racial lines?
I was hesitant to go for so many years, honestly, because I didn't think there was anything there for me.
Now, you sound like a very frightened individual.
I didn't think I would learn anything new. I didn't feel like I would get the answers I was looking for.
But I thought going over to that affinity group was where you learned more about being who you really are. So you avoided that opportunity for years? But you just told us of all the advantages of being around people who knew the truth of who you are, because they have a similar skin tone, I'm assuming.
But you know what? I decided I had to go.
Okay.
I needed to give it another shot.
Yes.
So I went.
And
I went to my first workshop.
Yes.
And as fate would have it, I sat down next to a woman from Minnesota, and we began to talk. As we spoke, she informed me that she too is adopted and that she was going to go to the transracial adopted affinity group.
Man alive! They have gotten to some granular categories at the People of Color Conference when it comes to their affinity groups. Boy. Woo! Okay. What? But now that sounds like a party right there. That sounds like the transracial adopted affinity group. Okay. Thank you. In human form, social criticism and psychology, fire. Are you calling fire in a crowded theater? Thank you. In human form. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. Everyone, if you're not aware of In Human Form, or Formy, he does, sort of quasi-true crime / psychological analysis, sociological analysis videos on YouTube. I have actually done an interview with Formy on my previous episode of Familiar with the Matter. You can check that out on the playlist as well. So go check out his channel if you haven't already. And welcome to the show, Formy. Dr. Keeve, new buzz phrase. Okay, well, transracial is not a new buzz phrase. That he's just combining things into a categorization there, so that's not new. That's been around for a while. I think Rachel Dolezal kind of set that one off. But anyway, okay, so you're going to go to the transracial adoptive affinity group. That's very specific and very granular.
Now, this group was new to the conference and didn't even exist 11 years ago.
I can believe it.
And she said to me, "You should come.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might learn something about yourself."
Oh, okay. Something that he didn't already know about himself, that he's adopted into a family that does not share his ethnicity. I mean, what else could you possibly gain to, or I should say, what other personal wisdom or insight could you gain from such a group except what you already know about yourself? I mean, I guess if there's some kind of like support group function there.
And I went.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, I was absolutely blown away.
Really?
When I got there,
Mm-hmm.
I heard stories of individuals that I felt, yes, I understand what you mean.
Really? Really? You went to a transracial adoptive affinity group, right? So this isn't even about, okay. Unlike other affinity groups, this one constitutes elements of someone's life, not the aesthetics of their being, but that they were adopted first and foremost, and adopted into a family who does not share their race and or ethnicity. Okay? Those are the results of actions, decisions, and happenstance. Those are not things like skin color, which says nothing about who you are or your experience in life, or the country you were born in, which says nothing about who you are or your experiences in life. But that you were adopted, that's an experience in life, a very specific one. That you were adopted into a family different from your own ethnicity or race, yeah, that's a very specific thing. So I can believe, in this instance, I can believe that you heard stories that you sympathized with because they were things that you had experienced. And none of that says anything about who you are.
They talked about what it was growing up, feeling like they didn't quite know where they belonged.
Mm-hmm.
They got to talk about their frustrations and their angers, but at the same time, their conclusions about what it felt like to grow up in a family of a different race.
Yes, because those are shared experiences. Shared life experiences. Being a particular skin color is not a life experience in and of itself. You know, having racial affinity groups does not guarantee you're going to be sitting there with people who all think the same as you, who have all lived the same life as you, and on and on. The group you are in right now, or talking about, denotes actual life experiences that you can share with somebody else. That's why when you're talking about ERGs, employee resource groups, which are effectively affinity groups in the corporate setting, a veterans ERG actually makes some sense because you're not grouping people up on non-determinative factors. You're grouping people up on a shared experience, a shared life experience. So yes, I believe that you heard stories you could sympathize with. I believe you found kindred spirits amongst this group. I can believe that. But I do not believe, and I shall not believe, that any of that determines who you are.
I got to hear how it felt when they saw the family picture. And they always knew, people were looking at it saying, something's not quite right.
Sure.
But I also got to hear how they got to speak to other people and say, it's okay. They're my family.
Yeah, okay.
So when I met these people,
Uh-huh.
I saw a place where I can ask questions and people could ask questions of me. It was a place without any judgment. I didn't need to know my identity in that moment.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Because if you are the constitution or the collection of all your life experiences put together to determine what kind of person you are and everything else, coming to that group with your personal experiences, you needed to know who you were in order to relate to the other people who shared similar but not the same experiences. You have muddled the idea of identity and experience into two different things. Well, hell, muddled the identity of experience, identity, and aesthetics. And they are all separate, and none of them say anything about either of the other two inherently.
I didn't need to have the answers to my questions.
Okay.
It was simply a moment where I didn't feel lost.
Because you were in a support group. That's what that was. And unless you're going to call all the other affinity groups support groups, as though simply being a particular skin color or being a particular gender is something that needs support inherently, yes, you were in a support group, a functional support group. Wow, what a revelation.
These people were willing to share their own vulnerability with me so that way I could choose to be vulnerable with them and learn more about who I was.
Well, I mean, if they elected to go into the transracial adoptive group, they were already, conceding to a certain vulnerability, a certain revelation of their circumstances. So sure. And that's fine. That's great. I can only imagine the kind of stressors and the kind of questions and everything else that would go into being adopted into another family first and foremost. Now, and then setting that aside even, but being in a family where I didn't belong in the sense that I was not a biological member of the family. I can only imagine. So I am glad that you found like-minded people, or at least kindred spirits who had similar experiences as you, that you could relate to them and they could relate to you and you didn't feel so lost. I am happy for you with all sincerity. However, again, none of that says anything about your identity. None of it. You could have a transracial adoptive saint and you can have a transracial adoptive villain. How you treat others, how you treat yourself. This defines your character. Everything else is window dressing.
So through the years, I've had a difficult time trying to identify what my race is.
I couldn't imagine.
As time's gone on, I've become more comfortable with it. And I'm willing to share that information with others.
Okay, what is it?
I am transracially adopted.
Yes, but that...
And it's a little complicated.
Okay.
But honestly,
Yeah.
I want people to engage in the conversations. I want them to feel comfortable and to feel vulnerable. So that way you can invite other people to be vulnerable with you.
Here's the thing. If I look at you and you introduce yourself to me and we have a long conversation and you never reveal to me that you are adopted, you know what my assessment would be of you? The exact same as if I knew you were adopted, because being adopted doesn't say anything about who you are.
And this has pushed me to be more comfortable with sharing information about myself with as many people that I can find because I want to provide that same platform.
You are not that interesting. I'm sorry. You are not that interesting. No.
And it brought me to a situation last year. I had a student, or I should say I had a class with some students, and I let them know that I was adopted. And after class, many of them actually stayed behind because they wanted to talk to me and they wanted to talk about what it meant and what their identity was and what my identity was. And we got to share questions with each other.
Okay, if I was still living in the era in which I grew up and went to school, I would be big pressing X to doubt that that actually happened. However, given the focus on redefining identity in the schools these days, as I have done now countless videos on, I can actually believe that that happened. Also, given that it was his classroom, and if he believes that identity is defined as these things, that they would also believe that identity is defined as these things.
After everyone had left, there was one student who stayed behind who actually wasn't a part of the conversation. They just sat in the back and listened. And that student came to me and they said, "I'm adopted too."
Oh my gosh.
And I had no idea that you shared the similar experiences as me. I had no idea that what I was feeling was something that someone else was feeling.
Yes. Sharing similar experiences, finding kindred spirits. That is not... It's wonderful when it happens. It is also not uncommon.
And all I want is to sit down from time to time and to talk to someone and to ask questions and to learn more about myself. So what I know I'm doing is normal.
You want to establish I will use the terminology that he's using. You want to establish a transracial adoptive support group. Fine. Great. Understandable. What does that have to do with any of this?
I never would have known this about this individual had I not been willing to take that risk to put myself out there and to share more about myself so that others could come in.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But why are you tying this to identity? Why wasn't this presentation about searching for kindred spirits who were in the same situation that you were? Why didn't you do this entire talk about not feeling like you fit in with your family and needing to find some connection beyond that? Because my family, as wonderful as they are, there's just no way they could understand how I felt in the position I was in. And that's why I started the Share-a-Lot program or whatever. For people who lived in similar experiences of being adopted into families where they didn't belong or didn't quite fit and needed some support. I would be on board with you from stem to stern on that one. Because like I say, I can only imagine what that must be like, right? And everybody from time to time needs a shoulder to lean on. I could buy that. But that's not what you're doing here. That's not what you've been doing. It's kind of disappointing, honestly.
So here's my wish for everyone. My wish is that each of us can see ourselves and as others as more than just a checkbox.
Oh, come on. Okay. And pardon my French for those of you in the cheap seats, but fuck you. A checklist on a registration form is not reflective of how people see the world. Maybe that's how you see the world. In fact, if you're promoting the idea of affinity groups, I have a strong suspicion that that is how you see the world. But I am not going to tolerate that accusation of me. No. Nuh-uh. No way. No how. No.
Let's move past that one thing we think we know about other people and join in the conversation.
You promoted affinity groups. You promoted the idea of portioning people off on the basis of their skin color for mutual benefit. You did that. So I'm sorry, who is promoting the idea of looking at the world in checkboxes? You had me a second ago, okay? I was feeling kind of sympathetic for you. You know, you told your story, you finally got to the meat of the argument, I thought. You were in a unique situation and you did not have any peers in that situation. Being adopted, not looking like your adoptive family. Okay, you got me there. Sympathy up the wazoo for that one. But now you're going to lecture everyone on checkboxing people on the basis of race. You don't have a stick to stand on. Nuh-uh.
So that each of us can learn more about what your identity means to you. Thank you.
No. You could have ended on a high note there, but you jumped right into the ditch. No. Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. We can't be one until we are separate. Don't you get it? Yeah, until we have categorized ourselves on the basis of non-determinative factors, we really don't know who we are. So first and foremost, let's make sure that we all sit with those that look like us, because that's filter number one. And thank you, the Gay Rascal, TEDx, finding new inventive ways to say, oh, woe is me. Yes. Boy, this was a bit of a roller coaster, because I was just all dumbfounded for the better part of 3/4 of it. And then I started to understand more of what he was getting at and where he was coming from when he finally transitioned away from identity to shared life experiences support group. Okay. But that last one, that zinger right there, oh boy. Okay. Anyway, let us bring up ye old bingo card here. And let's see, is that framed right? Let me zoom out just a smidge. Okay. So let's go over the bingo card. I will go over it once on my own, and then I will go to the chat. If there are squares you think should be circled, save your arguments for a moment or two, please. And we'll go. Marginalize marginalization. Implicitly, but I'm going to wait for an argument from the chat. He didn't say it specifically, so I'm going to wait. Leaves out vital context. Vital context. For the sake of what it was, I don't recall that I was that dumbfounded that he didn't end up giving an answer for. So, unless I'm forgetting something, because that last little bit might have blown my short-term memory out the window. Feminism, no. Contradicts own point or argument. Yeah. That little checkbox thing at the end, after he had just regaled us with tales of affinity groups. Yeah, not a fan. Diversity and inclusion. Yeah, I'm going to go for the inclusion part, at least in spirit, because he was talking about bringing people in, etc., wanting people to understand and so forth. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, that was one of it, the one part of it. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase? No. And again, trans, racial, whatever, that's not new. He didn't come up with that. And I was honestly surprised that he didn't have either an organization to pitch or an app or some method. I was very surprised by that. Word salad. See, the metric I usually go for in trying to figure out if there's word salad is if I ever, during the course of the stream or the show, go because it's just like, you know, verbal diarrhea with nothing there. But was it word salad? I might need an argument from you guys on that one. Patriarchy, no. Wage gap, no. Systemic institutional. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here. The system of registration forms and having to categorize yourself in various institutions on the basis of your race or ethnicity. So that is me going a little, aggregate there, but I think that's fair. Privilege. He never really got into that part. He never really talked about that. I mean, obviously, he talked about how his adoptive family was white and he wasn't. But I don't recall that he ever started making contrasts in life circumstances or just mentioning the word privilege. So self-vilification or wretchedness. No, surprisingly not. I'd say no, because he wasn't vilifying himself. He was playing the victim, certainly. But he didn't make himself out to be wretched. He made himself out to be the leader, the bellwether. He who shall instigate other people to find themselves. That's not doing anything other but elevating his own notion of himself. Equity. There's a lot that can be said about the affinity groups in that regard. Equality of outcome. That's a tough one. I'm going to leave that for now. Weightless example. I mean, honestly, this entire thing, as relates to identity, was a weightless example. I mean, the main theme of the talk, nothing that he talked about had any merit towards answering the quote-unquote question of identity. So I'm fine circling that one for basically the majority. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. There was a reason here to bring up race. If he's talking about the and he eventually got there, the difficulties in being in a mixed race adoptive household. There is a reason to talk about that. Not that it related specifically to identity, but there was a reason, so I can't circle that one, unless somebody's got a better argument. And lastly, white supremacy. Again, he mentioned the fact that his parents were white, but he never really went off into any sort of racial politics elsewise. So it would be quite a stretch to say that he ever brought up the concept, even abstractly, as far as I can tell. But again, if you guys have any arguments for squares to be circled, now's the time to put them in the chat, and I will entertain them. Let's see. Let's see. Sean Uli, this whole thing was about a diversity and inclusion. Yep, and I circled it, so it's there. Let's see. Lexi Mad, Scribelight, all of this over an optional part of the form. You never have to check those if you don't want to. He was after affirmative action monies and placement. I can't speak as to his motives. I don't know. I have seen the checkboxes argument made multiple times in multiple presentations as some signifier of meaning beyond just sort of, demographic polling, and let's not kid ourselves, if a school has an affirmative action policy, that checkbox does carry some amount of weight. They'll never say that it carries all the weight, and maybe it doesn't. I can't speak for every college. But when it comes to college registrations, if that college has an affirmative action program, that checkbox is significant in some way, shape, or form. Let's see. Dr. Keeve, Scribelight, I only think of your nighttime co-host as the black one, not Satsu. Exactly. And Dr. Keeve is being facetious there, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. All right, what is identity? Right? Is it what you look like? Is it your origins? Or is it who you are? How you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you move through the world. And beyond all that, very shorthand, your name. All this other stuff, it is superfluous, ultimately. And again, when I say that, I am not saying that it is not of importance to people. Okay? Your culture, your history, the food you like, all these other things. their importance to you as an individual or to you as a family, as far as traditions and everything else, I am not dismissing that as somehow unimportant or irrelevant. But if you take all of those things, separate them from you as an individual, they say nothing about the person they might otherwise be attached to. You see, that's what I'm getting at. I just want to make that clear. I'm not trying to just be dismissive of the things people like or the things people value about their family or their traditions, their virtues, their principles, and so on. And nothing of the sort. It's trying to tie those things as to saying they say something about who you are. And I mean, okay, your values and your principles, certainly, right? Those things could obviously say a lot about who you are. But all of this aesthetic stuff, all of this window dressing, all of this performative stuff, no, not by themselves. Let's see. Always lost on nothing else. I see 4 almost bingos. Yes, there are 4 almost bingos. And I'm going to need a really good argument on any one of those squares to get me to circle it at this point, because nothing reflexively comes to my mind as to circle them for. So I'll give it another couple of minutes here, guys. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, if you can give me a great argument for white supremacy, if you can give me a great argument for leaves out vital context, if you can give me a great argument for word salad, or if somehow you can give me a great argument for Coin's new buzzword buzz phrase, because again, that one's going to be the toughest, because I don't think there was anything in there that I hadn't heard previously. I'd heard the term transracial before 2019 when he said this, but even then it wouldn't be a new term. So any other arguments, guys? I'll give another 5 minutes here, and then I'm going to wrap this up. But I mean, just as a summary before we move on to anything else, what a frustrating presentation. There was a nugget right there about 3/4 of the way through. There was a nugget of something worth talking about. An argument that was actually something worth talking about. And I would have very little, and you heard me, I had very little to argue with. If you wanted to set up some kind of support system for people who are having the difficulties or confusions about where they fit in the world and their family because they were adopted, and or because they were adopted into a family of a different race, you got me. I have nothing snarky to say about that. That makes perfect sense. But that's not where he went. That's not what he used that for. And that's not the argument he was making, which is disappointing. So insofar as his efforts to try to be a kindred spirit to people who have those circumstances in their lives, who have had those experiences, good for him. I'm not disparaging that. I don't want anybody to be confused otherwise. I will not disparage someone helping other people through difficult experiences or difficult circumstances, especially if they can relate to them themselves. But that was not the point here. Alexi Mad Scribelight, this was still word salad to me. I feel like word salad is the other free space. In relation to what I just said, the fact that nothing that he talked about related one to the other the entire time, and then when he finally got to the meat of something good, it didn't relate at all to the first part, and definitely the last part had nothing to do and was contradictory to everything else he'd said previous. You know what? Yeah, I literally cannot argue with that at all.
Bingo. What? Of course!
There's our bingo. I don't think we're going to get another one, but that one definitely, I think, is valid. Yeah, the culmination of the entire presentation constitutes word salad, because it was all these disjointed things put together, and none of it had anything to do with identity. And just as a closing thought, and I know I've said this before, this redefinition, this rabid effort to redefine identity as race specifically, is so insidious.
And I know those of you that have listened to my videos in the past are going to be sick of me repeating this story. For those of you that are new or just haven't heard it before, I'm going to say it again. The first time I ever heard the concept of racial identitarianism was from a book called The Gathering Storm that was written by, I think, Morris Dees of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And this is back in the 90s. And this was a book that was attempting to explain or expose the militia movements and the white supremacist movements of that era, specifically related to the Oklahoma City bombing and the kinds of groups and organizations that fueled into what led up to the Oklahoma City bombing. And that book gave me a scary nosedive into parts of the world that at the age that I was at back in the 90s, I didn't know anything about. Specifically, white identity movements. Collectivizing yourself under the banner of skin color to separate yourself as better and or as different or as inherently whatever from every other skin color. But here's the thing. White identity, black identity, brown identity, whatever identity is bad. It is a bad way to look at the world. It does not lead to good things. Racial identitarianism is poison, no matter how you cut it. And our speaker promoting affinity groups, the same things we've seen in schools now, splitting kids up on the basis of race and assuming that this is good for them, this is somehow beneficial, this isn't a giant leap backwards in our societal evolution. Yeah, if there's one thing that scares me more is just the casualness with which people promote racial identitarianism these days. But that is a conversation that we are going to be having for years to come, I have no doubt. But with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining with me. Join with me. And together we shall form Destructor. Constructicons, go! Or Devastator. Was it Devastator? I think the Constructicons made Devastator. Never mind. Anyway, everyone, thank you for joining me for this TED Excellence. Hope you all enjoyed it for what it was. If you'd like to hear more from me or from Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the two of us tonight on this channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, again, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. I hope everyone here is safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. Have a great rest of the day, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. Salutations. Auf Wiedersehen. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, adieu.